Okay, I'm not going live this time, for good reason. I in my last video, or yeah, it was in my last video, I had stated that it was Canada Day weekend and that there was partying going on. And lo and behold, here we are at another weekend, and still people are enjoying summer, and there's people coming in and out of the house and making noise. So I have to not do this one live. So there's, I think, 3.5 reasons why I'm making this one. Also, everyone is sick in the house from they got something at the cottage. Okay, there's 3.5 reasons, I guess. Let me get them in order here. So one is apologies. Number two is thank yous. Number three is I mentioned to Michelle, who is really supportive, and I appreciate when she reviews my covers or original songs and stuff. But the reason the Duncan era wasn't covered very well was I was absolutely exhausted by the time I got there, and I was losing it. Right. Canada Day weekend, if you're in the States, it's kind of like the 4th of July, right? Like, we have huge barbecues, there's fireworks, you have people visiting, and all that sort of thing. It's great. Maybe not the best time to, after a lot of that, go out and try to record a video, right? So that's one of the first apologies, is that I did a horrible job with the Duncan era. Now, there's some legitimate reasons why I did a horrible job. I may not know much about the Rollers in general. That era, I know very little about. So when I go through these today, this is just going to be my take on some of the songs. And the other thing is, when I was saying that, and no one complained about this, but I think they could have, right? When I was saying that, I don't necessarily see hits on some of those records, and this is what happens to a lot of bands. That's not to say that the music isn't as good or even better than some of the earlier stuff. I mean, if you look at Ricochet, like I was saying, from beginning to end, it's a solid record. Whereas when I was talking about some of the earlier albums, which I love, they may be fantastic in 75% of it, but there are, to me, some weak points, right? So when they were in control and they had the time to write all of the songs and produce everything the way they wanted it, they make a good album from beginning to end. It's just that there's a big difference between AM radio and FM radio. And FM radio does have hits. Let's not pretend that it's not hits, but it's a completely different thing, like take rock in the 70s. A lot of that really got its on-air time with the advent of FM becoming popular, right? And because the sound quality, for example, it was a completely different way of producing. If you look at Motown, they compressed a lot of the sound to get it into that AM radio really easily, right? So I'm certainly not insulting those records by saying I don't see the hits, and that is not a bad thing at all. That doesn't matter to me. This is like a part of my record collection, mostly non-hits, unless you get to stuff like The Cure and the Smiths and the Jam, and I'm trying to think what else. Like, even the reggae stuff I have was not hugely popular. The Motown stuff was, So yeah, apology on not covering the Duncan era very well. Part of it's ignorance, and part of it was exhaustion. So I'm going to kind of cover that. My dog now my dog's upset, and I'm just thinking I didn't feed her yet. Oh dear, I'm literally the worst. But that's okay, because I'm not live, so I can pause, and I'm going to do that right now. Okay, the dog is fed. But not only did I not cover the Duncan era very well, I didn't cover the Breakout album, Breakout 85, at all. I don't own it, and it hasn't, for me, that would be the only one where I say it hasn't appealed to me yet. And that's because, and that's not because I don't think they did good songs or anything like that. Everyone has their preferences for styles of music. That entire style of music, for me, is generally hasn't appealed to me. So nothing against it at all, And the thing is, I listen mostly to vinyl, and it's a huge purchase to get that album. It's very expensive, and so I just haven't got it. And one thing I want to say is the Vox album, which I do have here, I can't talk to too much today. And the reason for that is, my stylus started to break down on my turntable during the pandemic. Actually twice, because during the pandemic, I can't tell you how many records I played, right? But the problem became, with inflation and everything else that's going on, it was getting to the point where I was going to have to cough up nearly $1,000 to replace it. So I do sometimes still play records on that stylus, but records that are expensive that I can't easily replace, I don't play, because I fear that the stylus is damaged and it's going to ruin that record, and it would be a nightmare for me if I ruined my copy of Vox. It's the only copy I have, right? And usually if I want to get that also, I have to get it from someone overseas, so it's at least 20 or 30 Canadian dollars just to get the thing shipped over here. So unfortunately, that has to wait, and I think I was dismissive of the album, but that would be more the real reason, other than the fact that the rumors about how that album came to be. And that album only came out in a few countries, I think. I think it only came out in like Germany and Japan. And the other thing I didn't mention is the New Rollers, which I think they had one particularly good song, but I don't have it on vinyl, and I'm not going to talk really about it. But I thought that band actually was really had some real possibilities, and they were like blazing ahead, like from everything that I've seen, and I wish I had seen them live. So I will get into these albums. Oh yes, so the other thing was, there's this, right, which I got early enough along. This is them live in Japan in, I think, '83. I got that. I don't play it much right now because I don't want to ruin it with my stylus, right? But I did play it enough times before the stylus started to wear down that I got a good idea of that, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. There's also Roller World, if people love the Bay City Rollers, but they're not sure if everything has been released over time. Roller World is live in Japan in '77, and it's some people will say they're slowing down a little bit at that point in time, and it could be, but there's just some simply blazing stuff on there. And I sometimes I'll just play that entire CD, and it'll remind me of seeing them in '77, right? Although I didn't have seats that were good enough to hear it like that, but it's just an incredible record, recording of a time that was incredibly special in music, and that I don't think anyone even knew it existed. Everything else was a bootleg, right? But the sound quality is great. So yeah, you can hear some of that on YouTube, and it's definitely on, I think, Spotify and Tidal, and you can listen to it. I have the CD here somewhere, but the CD doesn't actually play on my audiophile equipment. It only plays on my Mac. So that says something to me about like the version that I have anyway. The format of it, I'm not too sure what's going on. Other apology is that, so I made a video and I took it down, and and that's totally on me. And what had happened was someone had said something about what they had recorded and what they hadn't recorded and stuff like that, and I took that hypothesis because the person was upset, thinking I had deleted comments. Now, I wouldn't delete comments, but I will delete my own stuff if I think it's garbage after I post it, right? So I did post the thing that was garbage. But why was it garbage? Well, it was a hypothesis about when did they actually start playing in the studio. And the thing is, it's not my hypothesis, right? But I think most of us are able to say, oh, this is your opinion. Okay, let me look at it that way, and then you can go through all this stuff. And one of the things that would happen, and it did happen in that video, is I would just get incredibly angry, right, and be an asshole. And so I was. And, I couldn't convince myself that it was correct, but I was like, that's fine, it's hypothetical. But here's the thing about speaking hypothetically, is that people don't necessarily know that you're doing that. And they may come in halfway into a video and think, oh, this is what you actually believe, right? Everyone knows what I believe because I already posted it in my first video. I think that every single member of the band played a role, so I love all of them, and I thank all of them for making my childhood. I think a lot of us had rotten childhoods. That was the the theme of the 70s in some ways, and we had these records and they made us happy, right? But anyway, what started happening with that video was that then some comments started coming in on it, and some fights were starting to go back and forth. And I'm kind of like, why am I entertaining fights on a hypothesis that isn't mine? You know, I don't need this stress and these wars going on, you know, and I'm seeing it. It's funny because I was on Facebook today and there's these wars going on all over the place. And I don't want people to take it all too seriously and get upset with being a Bay City Rollers fan. And the reason I say that is that I have left so many fan groups of all different types. Like, I used to be in like different fan groups of like video games and stuff like that. But eventually what you find is that you get these armies fighting each other with opinions. 1 second. Sorry. I actually, no one has to actually wait. It's just me waiting as people go in and out. Yeah, you know, and even in the video game world, there's like these armies of people fighting each other. And, you know, for me, I'm always in there and I'm just like, can someone provide details about like this one thing that I need to know because I suck at this game, right? And there's condescending attitude and there's fiefdoms and all this other stuff. I hate it, you know, because I'm old and, you know, I'm not like in high school anymore, you know. But even if, you know, with your friends on, if you're on Facebook and stuff like that, sometimes you'll see someone like just like getting someone pissed off on purpose, and then, you know, these flare-ups happen, and it's called drama, and I so hate it, right? And what the funny thing is that like I'm a fairly I have too much empathy, but I'm also like an introvert. So these people that are like extreme extroverts or whatever, and so much involved in all this, they just drain and drain and drain all your energy, right? And I got no time for it. So, you know, that video I made, that was after 2 days of like entertaining and all that stuff, and I spent like an hour or so on it, and I had to get into that mindset of, oh, what is this hypothetically? Could be true, could not be true, who knows? You know, but when it starts to become, oh, we're going to have one of these flame wars, and, you know, I'm not going to have myself creating it, right? And that's one thing. And the other thing is, when you look at the hypothesis, what you're hypothesizing is that fraud occurred. And that becomes like a little bit of a libelous kind of thing, right? And so even though I'm hypothesizing based on someone's theory, that kind of puts me in a weird position where it's like, well, would I really come out there and say, hey, I have evidence of fraud when I don't? No. Why would I do that, right? So the entire thing was stupid. And, you know, I think one of the reasons I did it is that this guy has like a really good radio show that I was listening to back when I had time. Who has time now? Everything's so busy every week, because there was great stuff being covered on that show that, you know, there's so many people wouldn't play some of this stuff, right? So anyway, and as far as I know, they're going to make their own video about that, and they have the evidence, and so they can discuss it. Like, I'm just a random idiot, right? Like, if someone thinks that I'm out here with an agenda or something like that, or trying to build a fiefdom, you know, I appreciate when people say good and bad things, you know. One guy was like very insightful. It's like, this guy's pissed drunk. And it's like, well, yeah, that's insightful considering I just said it's Canada Day weekend and we're having a party, and I'm actually drinking beer. It's like, yeah, it was, you know. I saved that. I like, this is not my job, and I would never want it to be my job. You know, it's a hobby, and my guitars and stuff like that. It's a hobby. But no, so my agenda. So yeah, I think people should be honest about their agenda. My agenda, if there is one, is that I like everybody in the band, and to me they were all crucial. And as we go through time, and that includes Duncan, that includes Ian. I don't know anything about Pat, and someone posted, hey, you know, he was actually on It's a Game, and I do know that because I have the It's a Game 45, and it actually has his picture on it, right? And he's in the video. He's in the official video for It's a Game, I believe, right? But I don't know enough, you know. But not everyone knows everything. So I'm not a super fan. That's what some of these other people are as well. Like, they have so much knowledge and information, right? I don't know where I was going with this. So yeah, you know, that's not my responsibility, is what it comes down to, is to really go through someone's hypothesis. And this is the other thing I'm going to say about taking in a hypothesis and trying to internalize it and trying to understand it. Even in personal life, this can be very dangerous. And I'm going to give you an example. When Trump was running for president the first time, my girlfriend at that time really disliked Trump. And he was on TV and I was laughing and she just looked at me with these cold eyes, right? She's like, "What are you laughing at?" And I said, "He's going to be the next president." And she couldn't believe I was saying that. Why was I saying it? Well, I was putting myself in the mind of someone who feels like they have no power. And do they want someone that's talking down to them? Or do they want someone who just speaks out angrily and says, "We're going to change this and all these other people are bad and we're going to do this stuff"? Well, obviously they want the second. And sure enough, he won the election. But I wasn't saying, that, and I'm not going to tell anyone who I would vote for, but I'm not saying that I would vote for that person, right? But it can be misconstrued. One sec. So having said all that, and this has already gone on for quite a long time, I think it's time to get moving with... did I say my thanks yet? I want to thank everyone that commented, even if it's a simple, "This was my favorite album." I especially, if someone actually has pertinent information about the band, I always appreciate reading that. And I can't vet it, but I look at what my ears tell me, and I look at what they say, and I can be like, that makes sense, or it doesn't make sense, right? And I want to thank the people that introduced themselves and who I got to know, actually, who had bands of their own, and who enjoy the Rollers' music. And I've come across this quite a bit, actually. I find these people that were in bands in the 70s and 80s that were Rollers fans, and no one really talks about it. And I'm always fascinated with who pops up, right? And so I really appreciate that. And I hope that, just sharing love for all the members of the band, I think is fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to get straight into this. So, Elevator, which I didn't do a very good job of talking about. One thing I'd like to say before even talking about the albums themselves is some of the comments I heard, I think from Derek, about the era. I think he was specifically talking about the Ricochet era. But it sounded like he was having a very enjoyable time. He felt reinvigorated. He enjoyed having Duncan in the band, and he was enjoying the music that they were playing, and he thought it was some of the best music that they had recorded, and that it was too bad that no one had picked it up. And I agree with that 100%. So talking about this album, this is a fantastic album. It may appeal to only certain types of people, but there's some really incredible stuff on here, and I'm going to focus on a few of them. Now, one of these things that surprised me. So one of the great rocking songs with excellent production, and it's just, to me, super powerful, is Playing in a Rock and Roll Band. And I do believe that Eric's actually singing on that. But Duncan brought that song to the band, right? And it's just, I think it's just fantastic to have something that someone else is bringing for a change, and to have Eric go at it, right? And it just works like on every single level. I could play that at, and that's the thing I like about the production on here as well. And this is produced by Peter Kerr at Dublin Sound Studios in Ireland. I love an album that you can turn it up to just before you're going to get distortion on your speakers, right? And I'm talking about like 200 watts per channel stuff, right? This is that kind of song. One of the few albums I had that were like this actually became very collectible, and it was The Rising by Bruce Springsteen. The production was just at that level that you could play this at any volume. And as a matter of fact, listening to this, in some ways, I think it's better. It's really just incredible. Like, that song in particular, to me, really stands out for those two reasons. And the lyrics are so heartfelt about what it's, we have to understand these people at a young age get pulled into the music business, and it's what they know and it's what they love, and oftentimes they're taken advantage of as well, right? And this song just kind of lays it out there, and I love it. And I think everyone in the band could relate to it, and maybe that's why it just rocks so heavy, right? The next one I want to talk about is Hello and Welcome Home, which is Duncan and Eric writing on that. And this is a whole new level of composition, I think, for them. And on top of that, the production is spot on for what they're trying to achieve, and all the musicianship is fantastic, and the way it's sung is just great. I can't find fault in it, like it's just it's a beautiful song. When you read this, Hello and Welcome Home, you're beautiful. Like, that might sound so simple, but God, I'd love someone to say that to me. Maybe not Duncan or Eric, but so that is great as well. And the next one I want to talk about is Stoned Houses 2. This one's written by Eric. And the thing I want to say about that one is that the production on it and the use of, I assume, synthesizers. I don't use synthesizers. I've only got like my Vox amps and my bass and my guitars. So I don't know anything about it, right? But there's excellent use of it. And I was saying that this was heading towards New Wave. And now I was kind of messing up there because New Wave had already happened in 77 and 78. But one of the offshoots of New Wave was modern dance music, right? Which was synth pop, some people call it, some people later call it techno. I don't know a lot about it, but generally what I do know is that when I was going out dancing in the 80s, that stuff was playing. Gary Newman. And what I'm thinking about that song is that it's leaning towards that stuff. So when I said New Wave, that's what I'm talking about. And in some ways, that song released in 83 would have just been, I think any DJ would we're putting this on. It would fit in just perfectly, right? And just like it's a game, they're a little bit ahead of the curve here, so, no one's paying attention. And the thing I wanted to say also, going back to It's a Game, when I said people weren't ready for it, there were two parts. One was, how deep the cuts were, but another thing was, that was essentially an R&B album with some rock, right? But that type of R&B wasn't becoming popular yet. And I know I kind of insulted The Jam in the last video with their cover of Heatwave. I actually listened to that today, and I'm like, well, it's their version, and it's actually fine. It's great for them, It's just I wouldn't go out and buy that 45, but I'll certainly buy the original. I don't know where I'm heading now, and I'm not pissed this time, actually. Yeah, I think let's just steer clear of all that and just say that the Rollers again are kind of ahead of the curve here, and 3 years later you could have played this at a discotheque and be fine. And yeah, so I guess actually what I was saying about It's a Game and the Jam was that the Jam caught up to the Bay City Rollers by the time they were doing stuff like the Beat Surrender, and they were doing their soul covers, and they were doing excellent soul covers at that point in time, right? And it actually reminds me of It's a Game, right? But they're years apart, right? But anyway, we're not talking about It's a Game. I kind of covered that the other day. So for me, actually, an instant relay, I think also is kind of, actually I might even be thinking of instant relay. It all starts to blend together, right? Which is another Eric Faulkner song. And that's another one which, actually I guess that one's more synth, right? That I think you could just throw it on in 83 and people wouldn't bat an eye about it, So take a listen to the album yourself and see what you think of that. I think that in some ways they were ahead of the 80s power pop that was going to happen, and I think they were a little bit ahead of what dance music was going to become in a few short years, and I think for FM radio play, I don't know why you wouldn't play it, other than the fact, and I mentioned this before, radio silence. Some bands just couldn't get played anymore, and part of that is the end of the independent DJ, right? Which only exists in community radio these days. We had one DJ here in Canada that was responsible, I think, for a lot of what happened at CFNY, and I heard that he continued to be an independent DJ, playing what he wanted for a while. But I don't know the details of it. But community radio is so important because all the huge radio stations are generally controlled. What's getting played isn't up to the DJ. So the old concept of the DJ that we had, who was the person who was finding diamonds in the rough and playing them and then becoming hits, that's just not what most of the DJs are doing. I think of Rodney on the Rock actually was playing during like the early new wave and punk era. That you need guys like that are going to play these underground things, and maybe they'll become big. A lot of the stuff Rodney on the Rock played didn't become big. Other stuff did, and there's compilations of his favorite stuff, and they're great compilations. Okay, so I'll be back in a second. You won't even notice. I'm going to go through this album and think about the impacts the songs have on me for this one. Be right back. Okay. I've listened, I don't have to listen in depth because I know every note on the album, but sometimes I forget which song is that. That's just me. The songs that I would like to talk about on this album. First, actually, before I even start talking about the songs, I want to talk about something that's an unfortunate thing, but also a great thing about rock and roll. And this is the thing. The difference between rock and roll and maybe even popular music in general versus what we refer to as classical music and then some of the very professional jazz music is that rock and roll kind of requires an image and it requires a bit of swagger. And then you have to live up to that when you get on stage, right? So with this album, the band delivers in spades on every single track. There is not a fault in anything that's happening at all. And they have an image, and this is the image that they're putting out there, right? And the thing that starts to happen about that is that the image that people are going to buy? It's as simple as that. Is that what people are buying at that point in time? And so you have to go to 1981 and look at what was selling, what was the image, right? And I know that's awful. But it's also what attracts people to rock and roll in the first place. And I think that as musicians mature and they're just like, we care about the music and this is what we're going to do, they get cheated. Because guess what? These guys have already proven themselves, so it shouldn't matter. And so, when I came across this record, I immediately whoop, that's for me. I'm taking that because I know these guys are awesome, and I bought it, and it was an awesome record. But there is a record buying public, and I had a friend actually that worked at, I guess, EMI, and she was just saying how record collectors are not where we get our money. We get our money from someone seeing or hearing something that doesn't buy a lot of records and demanding that they have it. And sales go up at Christmas and stuff like that. Everything's changed now. Everything is streaming, except for old people like me buying records, still trying to find records that we didn't get when we were young and stuff like that. So, yeah, where am I going with this? I guess is that they're kind of getting, they've earned where they are, and they're still getting kind of like the short end of the stick, right? That's my opinion. It's like these guys have written a ton of great songs. They've done a ton of great records. They're doing all this stuff, and they're in control of it, and it's just bias. That's not cool anymore. They're not cool anymore. Forget about it, And I find it really fascinating that some bands never go out of style, other bands do. You know, some of them, they come back. Stuff that you think is never going to go out of style, suddenly people are like, okay, we can't handle this anymore. And I won't get into all of those. But there's so much psychology involved in popular music, versus albums, you know. And so I'm not saying that because this is more serious music, it's better than the earlier stuff, because that's exactly what people were saying about, like, the Beatles, right? No, I'm not going to say the first Beatles album isn't fantastic, you know. I have said about the Rollers that they had weak spots in their early records, and I think it's definitely true. And they got to the point where it's just solid from end to end. And that's why I was saying, like, I put this on, the needle's not coming off until both sides have been played, right? That's just the way it is. So here's the songs I want to talk about. Doors, Bars, and Metal. Okay, that one is totally insane, right? I don't know if they expected that to be played on the radio. It's not going to be. But what are you guys doing? Like, it's just so over the top, you know, and it's also so good. So that's when you know that someone's comfortable with what they're doing, right? And I'm going to get into that with another song later. They're comfortable with what they're doing and they don't care, right, what you think. Life on the Radio next. That one is one of the songs, like, people may know I'm trying to learn every song that they've ever done, just to further analyze, you know, all of their music. But I did learn at least the bass line on that, and it's brilliant. It's just, it's not overly complex or anything. It's just, like, I used to play that on a fretless bass, and it was just the most calming feeling, and I can only imagine that they loved recording it, they loved producing it, because the production is good, there's some really nice effects in there. Great stuff. I also learned the bass line to No Doubt About It, which nearly broke my fingers trying to play that. It's ridiculous. The next one I want to talk about is Set the Fashion. Because the guitar, you've got a higher frequency and a lower frequency melodies going on here, and they complement each other so well. And once again, it just shows people that are confident and they're rocking out and they're doing what they want to do. And I just think the song rocks from beginning to end, right? And what I would say about that, when I say about them rocking, I really think there are videos from this album. Even if you're on Tidal, you can see 3 videos from this album. And once again, it'll fit into this whole concept about, well, what's cool at the time? Is this going to be cool? And who knows what's going to sell, right? But the other thing I would say is that there's this movie, Burning Rubber. And in that film, we've got Derek, Stewart, Duncan, and Alan, I guess, are in that, right? But Alan's the main character. So there's this scene in the pub where the band is playing, and I think it's Derek and Stewart, like Woody, and Duncan. And that I find fascinating because they're playing like they would have played in the pubs, and we know all these guys started off gigging, right? And I really like that scene. You're getting a feeling of, especially without Eric there, Duncan is the leader, right? He's kind of like leading the band right now. And he's so comfortable in doing such a great job. And you can kind of say, this guy, he'll play a gig at the pub or at a small, like, if you're from Toronto, like Lee's Palace or something like that, and do great. And he's also comfortable enough and accomplished enough that he'll play like huge venues, right? And I think it's just a fascinating thing, and it's on YouTube. You can find this movie Burning Rubber, but you have to find it. I think it was recorded in like South Africa and then released in Germany. But you know, like I say, the people that actually know this stuff know it, and you can talk to them about it. So someday I will have a new stylus. I haven't even checked to see. I was so fed up at the time with inflation, like. I have to buy like amps and guitars and stuff. I don't have that. Like, think about it. Why would I pay $1,000 for a stylus when I can get like a decent tube amp, right? So if that keeps up, for me, vinyl is dead for me. You know, I can't afford that kind of stuff. Okay. So I did want to talk about, okay, Roller World, which is the CD. There's two. There's like a Japanese and then like I think an American version of that. Listen to that. If you hate it the first time, listen again. Continue listening until you start to appreciate it. The first time I heard it, I was like, eh. During the pandemic, I really started listening to it, and it just started to blow me away, the things that are happening on there. The vocals are great. Eric Faulkner is he is on a level like I just can't even imagine. In the video that I took down, I mentioned like, this is the guy you want in your band. This is the guy you want in the studio. He like, I can't even explain it. Okay. Now, some of it is because when someone says Eddie Van Halen, you go, oh, Eddie Van Halen, like he's going to get on stage, not make any mistakes, and he's going to be blazing away like crazy. But people don't know this about Eric Faulkner, right? But his style is different because it's more of a classically trained. So he's doing these. There are moments of pure genius in what he's doing. But there's also moments of simplicity that drive the audience out of their minds. It's just incredible. So I really like that one. Now this is a live double album that came out soon after the 1983. I think it was like their second year of reunion concerts in Japan, and I guess everybody except Duncan shows up on here, right? Pat's there, Les is there, Ian's there, Woody's there, Derek, Alan, Eric, right? I don't know. You guys see this? I think most of the people that are watching my videos already know this, because but if there are people that don't know it, then I think that's great. Not inexpensive. You know, with all the shipping and everything, it costs a little bit of money to get this. So I'm going to go. First, I'm going to explain the album. This is a concert. They have backup singers. They have, look at the stage, right? This is a big deal, right? This is the full-on. It kind of reminds me if you watch like the video of Cyndi Lauper live in Paris, right? You got everything going on. You know, now she has to use a band, right? Because she was in a band originally before she went solo. But, you know, she has to hire musicians, and I'm sure some of them played on the album and some of them didn't, right? But here you have a full band with added personnel. And this is what was, you know, this is the kind of concert you paid big money to go to in the 80s, right? It's fantastic. So I'm going to go through some of the songs on here. Shang-Lang, Summer Love Sensation, Remember Sha-La-La, Bye Bye Baby, Give a Little Love, Money Honey, and Rock and Roll Honeymoon start off the album. And they're kind of blazing through some of these, and you're thinking, do they... At one point I was like, do they even like these songs? Because they're just like going through them. And the reason for that, though, is that they have so much material at this point in time that they want to cover, right? Because then they have Rock and Roller, and then they have Lonely Nights, which I believe is like a less... Oh, no, sorry, Lonely Nights. I actually have that album. That's Ian Mitchell, right? That's a good album. I have two Ian Mitchell albums. They're both good. One is a like synth reggae album, and it's just a fun album. I wouldn't take it too seriously, but it's fun. Dedication... So you can see, obviously, they're getting into Ian's doing his bits here. I Only Want to Be With You. Let's Have a Party. So I have to assume that's Pat coming back, because that was the big thing that he did in '76. It's great. It's fantastic. That's like a Wanda Jackson. I think Elvis Presley did it first, and then Wanda Jackson did it. And it's pure rock and roll, straightforward. And I think it's just fantastic that they played it here, and they had played it in the past. Funky Music, which I think also that's Pat, right? It's a Game. And The Way I Feel Tonight, You Made Me Believe in Magic. Shanghai in Love. They sit down and try to do Shanghai in Love. And when I saw that was on here, when I received this album, and I was like, oh, good luck with that. You're not the Everly Brothers, right? And also there's a whole bunch of instrumentation on the studio with Shanghai in Love, so that's all gone. So you're just going to have to sit there with a guitar and sing it. One second here. I don't know why, but there was noise and then everyone just went away. The Way I Feel Tonight, You Made Me Believe in Magic, Shanghai in Love. I was already covering Shanghai in Love. Yeah. So I think it's a decent Shanghai in Love, but like it's going to be hard to do, right? You're a Woman. Thank you, guys. Thinking of You, Jig, Long Distance Love, Les is on Fire. And I'm so happy that everyone like picked up the song, learned it so quickly, and boom, there you go. Turn on the Radio. So we're getting into those later albums. Duncan's not here though, no doubt about it. Underground. They did like everyone's working together on that, and they did a great job. I remember a Piece of the Action, which was like a 45 that was coming out of theirs, and like I don't even know if that's even on Breakout 85. I don't think so. There's like so much earlier. Rock and Roll Love Letter, Don't Let the Music Die, which they have to play in Japan, right? Like if you listen to the 77 or the 76. No, the 77, I'm just trying to think. No, the 77 or the 82, sorry. If you listen to the 77 concert or the 82, the year before this, I think, right? Don't Let the Music Die is the highlight of the entire thing, and the crowd is singing along, and it's very actually emotional. And I know that Derek has mentioned that's like a highlight for him of his career. And I thought it would have to be when you're in another country, the people don't even necessarily. It's not their first language that you're singing in, and they're all singing along. Thousands of people. And loving every minute of it. Like I can't imagine anything better than that. And then they ended off with Saturday Night, which everyone knows is my absolute favorite song. So great stuff. It's a completely different sound for them. Like I say, this is one of those big 80s concerts kind of thing where you bring in extra people and the band is free to like play their instruments, do a little bit of singing, have some backup players, but they've all learned each other's songs as well, right? And I think that's just great. But I mean, these are all professional musicians and vocalists at this point in time that have been around the block, and they do a fantastic job. Is it everyone's cup of tea? Well, if you want them to sound like they did in 77, this is completely different, and it progresses because it's got music from everyone, even in their solo careers on there. I'm glad I have this. I wish I could trust my stylist right now to play it, but I can't. So I think that covers things other than Vox, right? It's kind of like sitting out there, but the question becomes, well, who am I, and what does it matter that I review Vox? Well, I'm just a random idiot that takes the albums kind of at their word and the band members at their word, and I don't know a lot about these people other than the like Ian Mitchell albums that I have outside of them in the band, because what I care about is the music and I want to popularize that. And actually talking about that, when you play their music without bombarding people with it, you can find that suddenly people will become fans of this band. And I'll give you two examples. A person that I used to live with, You're a Woman, would come on quite frequently, and I just remember one day he was like, because he originally was like, what do you listen to this band for? Because usually I'm listening to the Dead Kennedys or something, right? And I remember he was just, this is a really good, like, this is a great song. And I'm like, I know, like, it's just fantastic. And also, like, with my son, he heard their cover of Bye Bye Baby a few times. And he said to me, I know it's just a cover, like people say, but he's like, it's off the charts. Like, this thing is ridiculously good, right? And that's nice to hear, because younger people are used to albums that are produced at a much higher volume and stuff without that dynamic range that the older albums have. So a lot of times they're like, why isn't it like just in my face? Shouldn't music be in my face? And it's not. And so it's kind of rewarding for to hear younger people saying, oh no, this is fantastic, this is great. So yeah, if you keep the kind of like insanity out of it and you just kind of play the music every once in a while, people will actually become fans, right? If they hear the stuff, especially though if they hear the stuff that wasn't played on the radio, So I think that's the end of it. I don't have a lot more to say about the band other than the fact that I only know, in many ways, what certain band members have said, and what I've read and what the album cover says. And I can't really get into, and I won't anymore, the theories about this and that. I wasn't there. And when you hear like two people that should be kind of like authorities on things and they're giving two different answers, it's like, well, I guess it's all lost to time and we'll never know, and we have to live with that and move on. But I have my feelings based on my years about things, and it's just me. I think sometimes people might think, oh, this guy put up this video and it got like 500 views or something. So what's he trying to do? Trying to tell people they were a good band. I didn't know that was a bad thing, right? They were a good band. And then the one guy posted, you're comparing them to the Beatles. And I'm like, well, if I was comparing them to the Beatles, the first Beatles album I said is one of the best albums ever made. The first Bay City Rollers album I said is a decent album. And I think that's a fair thing to say about the first one. They haven't yet gotten to that point, right? So I'm not going to, yeah, I did do a comparison. To start off, one was decent, the other was like one of the best rock and roll bands of all time. But that decent band started to grow into like a really good band, and you can believe it or not believe it. I don't care. Like all my life, people have been telling me they're no good. But I've got thousands of records. I listen to all kinds of stuff, and I'm saying, they're a pretty good band. I think they're pretty good. Anyway, everyone, I appreciate the nice things. I appreciate the comical stuff, and I really appreciate the people that are fans of the Rollers that also do their own music and stuff. I love to see that, and I love to listen to it. So anyway, have a good day. I'm going to relax for the rest of the night. So I'm happy.